the elected moderator due to his absence, and I'll be serving as the moderator this evening for the special town meeting and for the annual town meeting. And first order of business for me is to introduce the heads of the tables that are behind me. The Board of Selectmen, we have Mika Cardoza, our first selectman, Steve Mueller, Maria Madnick, Sheila Craven, David Vogel, Andrea Urbano. And for the Board of Finance, we have Susan Jacobs, Donovan Lofters, Thomas Handler, Beth Heller, Javier Aviles, Dwight Rowland, and our Finance Director, Anthony Genovese. And I'd like to recognize our former First Select people who are here, Beth Heller, Ellen Schlatter, and Amy Morella, who have done so much for our town over the years. I'd like to ask everyone to turn their cell phones off or put them on vibrate. If you need to take a phone call, please go outside. Kim Rio, the town clerk, is the clerk of the meeting this evening. Nicholas Bamonti, to my right, is the town attorney who will be acting as the parliamentarian. Tonight is a little different from prior years because we have two items on the agenda tonight. We have a special town meeting to consider and act upon a land lease option. And the second item that we have is our regular annual town meeting to consider the budget. And a quorum is required for the first of these, the special town meeting. We need to have 100 people. And in fact, we have over 100 people. So we have a quorum for this, and we'll be able to take a live vote on the first agenda on the item for the special town meeting. So I'd like to introduce our registrars, Anna Dickerson. Where's Anna? She's still taking. Okay. And Canal Hamilton. They are the two registrars. So I'm going to call the special town meeting of the town of Woodbridge to order. As the moderator, I have the authority to take action to keep the meeting under control. I know I'm not going to do that. I would just ask that everybody be civil and respectful to one another, and if you are that, I'll give everybody an opportunity to speak and voice their opinions. In terms of people who are eligible to vote, I think everybody who's here knows this. It's a custom that any person who is a member of the town can vote, and any citizen of the United States who is at least 18 years old and has a tax debt to the town of $1,000 is eligible to vote. And I just have to read a warning that any person who legally, fraudulently votes in any town meeting could be subject to penalty. And so I'm going to conduct our meetings tonight by voice vote because we have a manageable number of people. Now, I would like everybody who wants to say something to say something. I would entertain a motion to limit individual comments to 3 minutes to approve such a motion.
So moved.
Any second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. That passes. I would ask that if anybody has a remark to make, that you be as brief as possible. You address your remarks directly to me rather than to somebody else. And try, as best you can, not to repeat what other people have said. And if there's an issue outside the scope of the call or comments that are not germane to the issues at hand, I'm going to want to listen to it for a while, but you should be warned that I might rule it out of order. I would also ask that people not engage in ad hominem attacks, that be talking badly about someone else. Show respect, stick to the issues. And I will now read the call of the meeting. Item number 1, the special town meeting pursuant to section 3-2 and 4-8 of the town charter to consider an act on the land lease option and lease agreement between the town and Green Skies Clean Energy LLC, you'll see it to my left in the front row this morning, for the construction of approximately 1 megawatt solar panel facility on the town's former landfill located at 85 Acorn Hill Road Extensions. We have materials that have been made available. They're on the tables outside, as well as over the internet for you to read ahead of time what is being proposed. The people from Green Skies Clean Energy are also here to provide an overview of this proposal before I ask for a motion. And with that, I would like someone from Green Skies to make a presentation.
Hi everybody. I'm actually not from Green Skies, I'm from a company called Titan Energy New England. We work closely with independent comps and municipalities to run RFPs for projects like this. So I figured I'd just introduce the process that the town followed a bit before they would speak specifically to the project itself. Is that better?
Yeah, hold the microphone.
Just hold it. You come right up.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I figured I'd just speak to the process of it all quickly because I think that adds valuable context for the project and some of the supports that are available from the state that make it possible. So firstly, the Canadian Commerce Municipalities, the Renewable Energy Procurement Program exists to help municipalities with projects like this, put them out to bid so you're selecting the most qualified vendor for the project and securing the highest possible rent for that vendor over a 20-year period. So back in 2023, late 2023, we put out that RFP, analyzed results. Green Skies Clean Energy was the winner of that process. And just general word about the state of Canada doing these projects. This is a capital landfill, as everybody knows. So it's actually eligible to receive some additional incentive from the state, which is certainly helpful in driving that lease value that would accrue to the town over a 20-year period. Really, thrilling to be part of the project. I hope everybody here has questions that we can answer those. And I'll turn it over to Green Skies to speak about some of the specifics.
Thanks, Adam. Good evening. My name is Brian Linders. I'm Director of Business Development for Green Skies. I'm here with Dennis Hicks, who's a project developer at Green Skies, and Michael Gagnon, who's our engineer of record at SLR. Green Skies is based out of North Haven, Connecticut, is our headquarters. So as Adam had mentioned, the town through Titan Energy issued a request for a proposal back in 2023. Green Skies responded to that bid and was awarded through the town of. Fast forward to June of 2024, we then submitted this project, or this landfill, into a statewide RFP that's issued about twice a year, where we try to offer a bid to sell power to United Illuminating. Green Skies was successful and was awarded a bid to sell power to UI at a fixed price per kilowatt hour over the course of 20 years. Since then, after that award, I believe it was in July 2024, Green Skies then submitted an interconnection application to United Illuminating. We also have done a decent amount of preliminary due diligence on the landfill site, which was how we were able to back into the design that is seen behind us. So I could run through the basic terms of the lease agreement, but since completing the preliminary design, have been able to work with the town and the town attorney to negotiate and come to an agreement on the actual land lease, so what's in it for the town owner. So it's a 20-year term to match the power contract that we have with UI. Green Skies would be responsible for all the engineering, permitting, construction, and ultimately the maintenance and insurance costs associated with the solar facility. There would be no upfront or residual cost to the town of Woodbridge for Green Skies to own, maintain, and operate the system. The lease will provide revenue in two different ways to the town. There will be a fixed lease price of $60,000 per megawatt AC per year. This project is almost exactly 1 megawatt AC, so it will be $60,000 a year, almost on the nose, of guaranteed revenue for 20 years. The second part of this lease agreement is a revenue share. So Green Skies is selling power to the utility at almost 19 cents per kilowatt hour per year. It's a fixed price for 20 years. So beyond the lease, we're also offering a share of that 19 cents. This share comes out to 1.7 cents that goes to the town of Woodbridge for every single kilowatt hour that's produced on the site. The expectation in the first year of the project coming online is close to 1.7 million kilowatt hours of power in the first year. So that comes out to, on a dollar figure, close to $25,000 a year in additional income on top of the $60,000. So the total benefit on an annual basis is very close to $85,000 per year over the course of 20 years. The leased area will be fenced off with signage. The existing access to the public recreational parks behind the landfill will not be impeded, so residents can continue accessing the fields in the back. Green Skies developing on a landfill becomes with a lot of regulations. Green Skies cannot penetrate the capital landfill or disturb existing conditions on site. If disturbance does occur, it's on Green Skies and it's our responsibility to cure it. Green Skies, last point here, and Dennis could go into the design a little bit, but Green Skies will not or cannot build this project without the approval of the DEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It's about a 12-month review process, and that process begins once a land use option agreement is executed. We then send this to the state for their review of the prior closure of this landfill to ensure that the project, or to ensure that the landfill can handle the development. Dennis, would you like to speak briefly about the design?
Hi, so Dennis Hicks, Green Skies Clean Energy, I'm a project developer. And so, as Ryan said, it's just under 1 megawatt ground mounted solar array on the landfill cap. The design that we use for landfills differs from our design that we use for our traditional ground mounts. As Ryan said, we can't penetrate down into the actual landfill without risking violations of DEEP and waste. So we are planning to use what we use on every single one of our landfills, which is a ballasted system. So the racking will sit in concrete ballasts that just sit on top of the landfill and don't actually break into it. This is very standard. You can see it going up on the two landfills in West Haven. That's what we have. Those are two of ours, as well as West Haven and a bunch of other landfills throughout the state. For construction, we anticipate construction to take 4-ish months. There's the lead time. We'll have somewhat of an increase in traffic. We'll still allow usage and everything. It just will have more trucks on site. Also the transfer station, which is just to the south, that you can see in the shadowed area, will also be unimpeded and will remain in operation as regularly scheduled by town. And so once construction is completed, we will typically, I imagine that for this one, we use a pollinator-friendly natural wildlife seed mix, and we'll mow it about once a month during the growing season. That would basically be 4 or 5 times a year, maybe 6, depending on how the growing season is, about once a month in the summer. At the end of 20 years, as Ryan said earlier, we will have to decommission and take down the entire site. So if we don't renew for any reason, then what would be left at the end of 20 years would be as you see it today. It would be the landfill as we find it. We remove every piece of equipment, including all fences and everything. So we'll revert back to as it is today. Thank you.
All right, so with that presentation, I understand that there may be a motion by John Gorham, if he's here tonight, to approve this. Do you so move?
I move, yes.
John Gorham has made a motion to approve. Is this motion seconded by anyone?
Second.
Would you please state your name?
John Greer.
The motion has been seconded. It's now up to a vote. Is there any discussion first before we vote on it?
Yes, please.
Yes, would you please come to the microphone, state your name and address.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
Yes, one moment.
Testing.
Perfect. We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, good. My name is Diana McCarthy Berkery. I'm a resident at 18 Ranch Road, Woodbridge, Connecticut. Born and raised. Big fan of green skies. But I have questions. Everybody wants to do our due diligence. So for the green skies gentlemen, I'm going to state all 75 questions, and then you can answer them afterwards. I'm just kidding. There's only 24. So, okay, I had a question about whether or not this was a power purchase agreement, so whether or not the town was actually going to get any of the power to be usable and would apply to any of our meters. I was curious what the percentages of that the town gets of the revenue for the lease agreement. And also I was curious whether or not those kilowatt hours could be virtually applied to any of our meters in town. That's how we did it in Brantford. I was just curious if it was the same type of agreement or if not. Curious what happens after 20 years, what the options are. Is it an extension for another 5 years? Is there an option for the town to buy it out? That's just a question on what happens afterwards. Do you have anything that's required for who is buying the power from the utility? That's like that this is contingent on? Is it that UI is buying it directly and we're now like a micro generator that is feeding them, or is it does the power have to be allocated to various buyers in order for this project to move forward? Is there anything else that this arrangement is contingent upon? My next question was, we talked about the lease, and then we talked about the power, but there are all the renewable energy credits, so just curious who would retain those, and if there was a sale of the renewable energy credits, and that could be something that goes to the town as well. I was curious if our kilowatt hour cost, our revenue share is a fixed rate, or if that changes over the time. And also, what happens if the array generates more than what is estimated? Are the numbers that you gave us based on actual production? So whether it's lower or higher, we have a lot of clouds or we have a lot of sun, whatever the options may be. We also had a situation, and I'm not saying this would be the same, but we had a situation where Tesla was responsible for maintaining a multi-megawatt system, and we couldn't get anybody on the phone, and as a result, the panels were stuck in a certain position. I'm not sure if these are like dual access tracking or if they are going to be fixed arrays, but what happens if the panels can't track or they can't produce, and it's due to functionality of the system? How quickly can we expect a response, and is there a guarantee that we still wouldn't lose that revenue even though that power production hasn't been at what we anticipated? My question was who maintains the array, but it seems like you've already done that. I would just request the town please work with the Conservation District, specifically Chris Sullivan, because he's done significant work with other towns in large arrays to track and understand what the stormwater runoff would be like, because as we start to get more of these microbursts and heavier rains, rainwater speeds up and accelerates as it goes down solar panels, and then can have hit the ground with greater force and velocity, causing erosion. So I would just request that the town consider working with Chris Sullivan to evaluate and establish some good erosion prevention plans that are in there. Okay, I got to these questions. Of course, I'm on conservation, so I'll put that hat on for a second. What, if any, trees need to be removed or damaged in the building of this array? And if so, what is your plan to replant 3 times as many or more of those trees back in place? I have to ask that. Or also with pollinators and hedges, we want to know. And then, do you have a stormwater diversion plan to make sure that we're not going to be accidentally flooding the fields or flooding the transfer station or flooding any of the surrounding areas or damaging any of that park? And then my last question is, ISO New England recently released an article last week about the duck curve. So we have so much solar on our great array here in New England during the time that the sun is out. And so it looks like this beautiful drop in our energy use, right, throughout the daytime. And then when the sun sets, we have to ramp up all of our power plants, and it comes back up and it kind of looks like a duck. So we call that the duck curve. So is there anything in place right now as a resiliency buffer to hedge against that in case the state says, okay, we have too much solar, we need to disconnect some of this, or can we have battery backup storage, something that adds a little more resiliency to our grid? Thank you very much for those answers.
So, there's a lot of questions here. And I think that to keep it moving, the discussion, the areas of concern were about the power purchase agreement and the revenue question, number 1. Number 2, energy credits, would there be a sale of them? Number 3, the kilowatts, is it a fixed charge or a variable charge? Number 4, array surpluses, what do we do about that? Functionality and failure and revenues. Number 5, rainwater concerns to the town, working with Chris Sullivan. Erosion conservation. Number 6, tree removal, replanting and floods. Number 7, the duck curve during the sunset and resilience.
So just to clarify, Chris Sullivan from the Conservation District, not to be confused with our Chris Sullivan here in town. Okay.
All right, with that.
He's not from the town.
Is this on?
Wait, double check it.
Yes, a few of those questions were kind of pre-RFP, like some of the thought process that went in. So, as it relates to how we, the proposed structure of the deal, where this would be an asset that's connected to UI selling power directly. We took a look across all the town's electric bills, energy consumption, kind of how that all spread up. They're spread out between the school and all the various town accounts. And how to maximize the value of the program, the NRES program, which is the program that incentivizes projects like this. And the way to extract the maximum financial value is to do it in this way on a front-of-meter basis without like virtual net metering credits and things like that. Because the array is actually larger than the town's aggregate energy use. So, it's structured in mind with town energy use, program rules, how to maximize the value, incentive, etc. And then 2 aspects of this to touch on, how the dollars flow. As Ryan mentioned, it's basically split into a land lease structure and also a revenue share. So I think this is actually a really good way to kind of protect the town against some of the uncertainties around annual output from the system. We could have some sunny years, we could have some less sunny years, etc. Is it still working?
No.
Okay.
Gravity level,
So there really is like what I would call like a built-in hedge for the town, where 60,000 of the 80+ thousand is fixed no matter what happens. happen. So even if the array doesn't produce a single kilowatt hour, obviously it's not going to happen, but worst case scenario, that baseline $60,000 rent is still due to the town. And then on the revenue share side, that is more a performance-based payment. For their part, for Green Sky's part, they're entering into a 20-year agreement with UI to sell power directly to them at that fixed price. And a share of that goes back to the town. Get the exact numbers, 1.7 cents per kilowatt hour out of that 19. So there's a possibility that you could have, a higher production year, perhaps a lower production year, but that slice of the overall pie for the town, there's some variability, but everybody's incentivized to make sure that the system is working as it should, because that's how Green Skies earns their revenue. The system's not producing their revenue. You mentioned also the renewable energy credits, the renewable energy certificates. So under the NRES program, when you apply into it, one of the trade-offs of doing that is that the utility takes your rents, and they can do with them as they wish.
Towards their RPS.
Exactly. Yep. Trying to think of anything kind of pre-RFP that maybe best suited. I think those were the questions that
I think, so do we roll into the tree question?
Yeah, so
Okay, so it's a fixed tilt system, so not tracking the scenario, so they're just facing 30 degrees south consistently the entire time. There's no mechanism for them to fall in the sun in this situation. That tends to be the case for a ballasted system, so we're actually just going to put it into this ballasted concrete wall.
Can you talk a little closer to the mic for us?
Tree clearing, not at this site. So we fortunately will not need to be clearing any trees in this location. If a tree were to fall onto the array, that's our responsibility to manage the system. Our insurance would likely cover that in that type of scenario, but I do see some trees to the kind of northeast edge there. But we have accounted for that in our design. Our PVSys software that we use to project the output of the system is coming up at about 1.7 million kilowatt hours a year, which is how we're basing the revenue share side of this contract. What we expect to produce and sell power to UI is at about that figure.
So to touch on the stormwater, we'll obviously have to abide by all requirements from CTD, including the Appendix I, which is one of the governing documents about stormwater controls. We will likely probably be under the requirements that have to go through the formal process, but we'll have to go through the town process, and we'll meet with DEEP about making sure that we aren't going to be damaging the landfill. That's also, I imagine, part of the review of DEEP's post-closure use disruption permit. As you can see on the design and why it looks so weird, those sort of darker lines are the existing drainage swales for the landfill. We obviously will go through and do calculations and run proper stormwater calculations, but as long as those are adequate, we don't have traffic walls, because it's a lot simpler if nobody touches the existing cap of the landfill. If we just place everything on top of it. So as long as everything can be done to the existing design, which we imagine that probably can due to how landfills work, we don't anticipate adding more stormwater controls unless we have to, but we'll make sure that we do our calculations correctly and we won't have to. As far as trees, we don't expect to have to do any tree clearing. I see one spot that we're worried about, but I'll just put it down. That's a business question. After 20 years, basically, since we aren't allowed to sell power based off of the agreement we have with UI, how it typically works is we will either remove the system entirely or reapproach the town reapproached and everybody re-engineered and sort of renewed the project with updated technologies and go for another 20 years. We would be back here, we'd have to go through this whole process all again. But that is an option. We aren't going to close out, of that at the end of 20 years. But at the end of 20 years, we can't, the array can no longer still have the grid system has to be done. Typically, I don't know if we've reached the end of this. I don't know what phases happen. As far as what you're saying about ISO New England and duck curve, when we do, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, when we do NRES bids, we have to stipulate what we're planning, and we are allowed to move around panels a little bit. We're allowed to change between fixed and single axis tracker a little bit. One of the things I think they ask is battery or not. We didn't apply for a battery on this project, but there is every option to retrofit it later and add it through different means. I mean, there's, the batteries are not big, while they're heavy, you probably can't go on the cap. That's why we sort of hesitate from doing them on landfills. Right off of the cap, there's a lot of land. We could have that discussion if that's something that the town would be interested in, but for right now, there's no batteries.
I think also an aspect of the question was, what if, you got a call from ISO New England and say, we don't need the power, right? So UI under the NRES program is actually obligated to buy all the power output from this system. So, and I think that the phenomena that you're referring to is more like ISO level rather than a local distribution level. So, from an operational perspective, Green's guys, they wouldn't be in a position to get a call from, ISO that say they're going to have to disconnect the system, right? Because of what's going on below. So that wouldn't affect the economics for the town, either on the east side or on the revenue share side.
And then I think the next question, I'm not sure, I think is who would maintain the array. Green Skies has a team I think contract out the sort of maintenance as in terms of mowing, we have people come in and mow. But in terms of actual maintenance, we have staff on site and monitor 24/7. So if the baseball does, foul ball does go crazy and break one of our panels, we should be out there within the week, if not within the next 48 hours, replacing that panel. We'll come in, remove the damaged panel, take it off site, not leave it on site, not store anything on site, and then place a new panel and dispose of that. Just the Detroit panel, as we would any other Detroit panel. Which, since it's probably, that statement probably generates another question of the panels that we use do not qualify as hazardous waste like they used to. They used to have chemicals inside them, and if you broke them, they would leach chemicals. That's a technology that's no longer like the most standard, and we are totally able to dispose of these in normal municipal landfills and everything as we would with normal trash, but we handle all of that on our own.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
Yes.
Please come and be recognized. What's your name?
My name is Patrick Madden, I live on Newton Road. My question is the sightliness. What will we see? How high will these things be? And is there any mitigation if these things are over 7 or 8 or 9 feet? Just sounds like they might be.
Thank you.
So the question was about the visual impact. The landfill is actually one of the more ideal locations for this, as there are, I won't say none, there are a couple, but there are very few neighbors around it. It is largely surrounded by forests, and as you can see the blue lines up in the top right, those are all wetlands back there. There's nothing back there. You are correct, there will be a visual impact. As we said, these sit as a fixed tilt system at about 15 or 30 degrees toward the sun. which means that in total, they are between 10 and 12 feet tall from the ground up to the highest point. They extend down to about 3 feet tall, if I'm not mistaken. I think valves might have a little bit. But per National Electric Code, we are also required to have either a 6 foot tall with barbed wire chain link fence, or a 7 foot tall without barbed wire chain link fence. We typically opt for the non-barbed wire option, as it looks better. And as it's a landfill, we still can't pierce the cap. Fencing becomes a bit tricky. I know at times in some of our sites we've been able to swap for a more visually appealing fence. I can't make that guarantee right now because I don't know if that fence can be used on the landfill, but it's something that we would be open to, depending on if it is able to be used by National Electric.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, can you do, is it possible to plant something that could provide a hedge?
The question was about providing a hedge. It could be possible to provide a hedge if that is something that the town would be interested in. The problem, again, is going to be that it's on the landfill cap. And you can't be, the town itself is not allowed to have trees on the landfill cap because they would pierce through the, and so it's going, I'm going to have to say it's going to be very tricky to find screening that would be allowed on a landfill cap that won't risk breaching the surface. So it's unlikely you can do anything outside of fencing for internet screening.
Is there a setback?
Sorry, what?
Is there a setback that
There's a setback, which is that the lighter blue line. There's setback from wetlands. There's setbacks from property lines there. But since this is all town property, as you can see by the black box up there, that's the town property line. But I think the town actually owns both the parcels. There would potentially be a setback from property lines, but I believe we're within that on that. And there's not one from anything else that's in there. Unless I'm getting a zoning error on the field. But I don't think I
We have someone else that would like to speak. Please state your name.
Pat Allen at 28 Cornhill Road. So we would be affected by the construction, but I was delighted to hear you're talking about a 4-month period of time. And I assume during that construction period, you would try to use trucks that were a little less noisy than noisier. But we have sort of gotten used to some trucks going up and down because we have the transfer station right there. But from a neighborhood perspective, keeping it to the 4-month period or a little beyond there is fine. Picking up any litter, I don't imagine there'll be a lot of it, but just maintaining the area between the main roads and the transfer station would be of concern to us. I think it's a fabulous idea. That's a big empty hill. If we can generate power from that hill, I think it would be wonderful. And I don't think it would be an eyesore because there's kind of a hill that goes up. You know, when you're at the transfer station, there's a hill that goes up and then it kind of slants down. So I'm not sure that we would see much of the panels, but anything that could be done to make that attractive is fine. But I'm actually very excited about this, and I only recently heard about it. I think it's a great use of that area. Thank you.
What I'll also say about on other projects that we've had through the state, we've had to have certain conditions applied to us because of neighbor concerns, and so I believe that we have both had projects requiring an earlier start and an earlier finish, or delayed start and delayed finish in terms of working hours of the day. Obviously, nobody wants to take trucks driving down the road at 5:30 in the morning. Not that we started, I think we started like 7, but, you know. And so if that has to get pushed out, that is something we're open to. And if we have to end early, that's something we're open to. We just have to be able to figure that all out, but that's something we would figure out in the permitting stage.
Anybody else? Please come to the microphone and be recognized.
Sorry, John. I beat you, sorry. Amy Morello, 184 Rimmon Road. I have 5 questions. First, how do we know that it's a good deal for the town? I don't know who does that on behalf of the town from an economic perspective. Second of all, what are the, who bears the burden if there is an impact on the landfill after it's permanent, in terms of a risk through the construction or through its existence over 20 years? What happens if Green Skies goes out of business? Sorry guys, we got to think about it. It's 20 years. What happens if there's a hurricane and the whole state's overdue? So what level of hurricane force winds can you survive, and what happens if you don't? And the last question is, there was mention of a renewal option. I'd really like to know more about what those renewal options are, whether it's up to Green Skies or the town or some mix of the two. What gets renegotiated at that time? So that was, thank you.
We're good.
All right, so this was working, right? Okay, go to those. So the first question I think is probably best suited for me. So the CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, the Renewable Energy Procurement Program, is a resource for towns to run bids for projects just like this. So I always tell people the very best way to know what something is worth is to ask the market. So that's what we did. And for Green Skies' part, I can let them speak to some of their experience generally throughout the state, but I view it as one of the highest and best purposes for us to try to drive the maximum value for the town from this real estate. One of the variables which I think is worth noting that you kind of get into the wonkiness of the incentive programs and how they work, but we bid this project, Ryan mentioned this at the beginning of this presentation, that in order to get the incentives, we have to bid into a program. Basically what we're doing is we're saying to UI, and we're competing against other projects, we said, we'll sell you power for X cents per kilowatt hour. Project A, Project B, Project C, all got different rates. UI is where they select the lowest bidders first until they exhaust the funding for that round. So we bid the actual maximum that the program would allow, and we're still accepted into it. So we've extracted the maximum amount from the UI entrance program. So from a project cost standpoint, selecting a bidder with the lowest cost of will, highest lease rate that they can pay, extracting the maximum amount that we can from the incentive program, and also taking full advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which, if you folks are following the news, is being talked about as a possible bargaining chip for some tax cuts that are going to expire. And I won't get into the federal level stuff, but taking full advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act as well. So I think we're doing everything we possibly can to extract the maximum amount of revenue for this project. And then just on the end of coming up at the end of the 20-year term, I think from a bid administrator's perspective, and something that I always like to see as part of these projects, is that the town has an exit ramp from all of this without any cost. And the idea is to try to insulate the town from every cost and make this a pure revenue play for the town. But just to stress again, at the end of the 20-year term, if there's no commercially viable program available that we can operate the array and the town wants to opt out, Green Skies takes the equipment back at their cost, brings the site back to its pre-solar state, and then mutually agreed to extensions. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it's not unilateral, correct? I don't think there's unilateral rights to extend. So there would have to be a mutual agreement that there's a commercially viable pathway to keep the thing going and what the lease rates would look like in that case. And I think also the buyout, if the town wanted to buy out the system at fair market value, you could do that at the end of the 20 years. But again, I think realistically what this comes down to is at the end of 20 years, given where technology will likely be at the time, the incentives that will be available, you're probably going to want to start fresh. But if there's still life left in the system and the parties can mutually agree, then that's when you would enter into extensions on that lease.
Yes, it's basic, it's not so much a renewal option as it would be just redoing the project. It's an end and then a restart. But for your other questions, the typical one that we get if Green Skies goes bankrupt, there's a number of different mechanisms, and Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, who is better answer on this.
If Green Skies were to go away, the reason why these are such valuable investments is because it's a 20-year contract with the utility, which enables Green Skies to go and raise capital to finance this project, because it's guaranteed so long as we produce power, the utility will pay us so long as the utility still there. And if the utility goes away, then it's a much bigger issue. So because of that, we have a lender who will lend on this project and be able to raise debt for this project. If Green Skies were to go away, that lender steps into the shoes of this lease. So they're responsible for the operations maintenance of that solar farm. What they're going to do if Green Skies is no longer around is they're just going to go and find another asset manager to manage that renewable energy portfolio, part of the bigger investment strategy. So if Green Skies were to go away, the good news is we have a partner in this who will be financing it, and that lender will take over the responsibility. Yes, yes.
And then to answer your questions about wind, and then what was the other one? The other one was-
If you impact the, in actual construction or operation, you impact the
Yes,
landfill
so
adversely.
the liability, if we during the course of construction or as a result during the 20 years of operation, which is also one of the things that we have to maintain, breach the cap of the landfill, we are on the hook for all of the remediation. And so that's just the cost of doing business for us. That's why it's better for us to go through and engineer this properly so that that doesn't happen. Because reclosing the landfill is 6, 7, 8-figure task and a year-ish of construction. So that's a killer for us. And then I couldn't give you the wind loads that we're capable of supporting off the top of my head. But if any damage, baseball, whatever happens, then we would repair it, as I said before. And if it's a total loss, then we are insured. That's what it's for, I believe. If it's a total loss, we would come back. But I don't think I could swear to that at this point.
I would agree that the hurricane assessment, that our insurance policy does take into account all of those instances. So we would be made whole from our insurance provider.
So a lot of insurances do not take into account the risk of God, which I think a hurricane would qualify for. So are you sure there's hurricane damage, you've got insurance?
We do take out a significant insurance policy on the solar ground mounts. We do a significant wind load analysis as well, though, for major hurricanes. So when we're engineering this racking with the concrete ballast wax, we have to make sure that we can withstand a certain wind speeds. It's a requirement not just for landfill caps, but our rooftop projects and just ground mount projects. That kind of goes back to the lender. That's a requirement on their side as well. Their requirements are just as strict as anything else. So they're going to make sure that all of our studies have been completed to make sure something like that, we're at least prepared.
Do we have any other comments to be made? Please step to the microphone. State your name.
My name is John Gore. I'll keep this really short. I am the President Emeritus of Mazzaro Community Farm. Our family moved here in 1999. Our daughters went to Beecher, they went to Amity High School. We're thrilled that we live here. And we're particularly happy because the chance to have a windfall of income is music to my ears as a taxpayer. Thank you. One thing I'll say though is we need to recognize that climate change is real. There were droughts, torrential rains last year, fires in Connecticut. This is real. We owe it to the next generation of our students, of our children, of our grandchildren to pay attention to this. And I'm very proud of what's happened in this town. This project was first introduced 10 years ago. Tony and I can vouch for that. It's a long time coming, and we're thrilled that it's at this point. So thank you for all these technical answers that you've given us. So the next generation is looking to all of us, and Woodbridge is a place where we have solar on the Teen Center, on Amity High School, on Beecher Road School. We have 5 solar arrays at Mazzaro Farm. And Farmer Steve will tell you our food system is in peril because of climate change. So those are my comments. We're thrilled that it's come this far. Thank you everybody for all the work you've done.
Please state your name.
Yes, sir. Bill Silverberg, Jennick Lane, and I am in favor of this project, but I've got a few questions for you based upon my history.
Can you speak a little closer to the mic,
Yes,
sir?
I'm sorry. I owned public service in New Hampshire. It was a good write-off. It went bankrupt, okay? Seabrook went south. So I've got a couple questions. First of all, is this taxable property? Taxable again, it's the array. We tax, I believe, and correct me if I'm...
Clean energy is not taxable. It's tax exempt.
Let me finish, please, okay? If I understand correctly, we tax the towers of the cell companies in this town. Is that correct? Yes, we do, Tony, okay? So I would assume, unless someone can tell me otherwise, that we will be taxing these arrays? We will not. What is the reason for that, please?
There's a statute in the Connecticut State.
There's
The Connecticut State statute that says clean renewable energy is tax exempt.
You might recall that when I set the rules, that we were not going to address our questions to people, we were going to make comments. And so I think this is fine, we've got a good answer about it being non-taxable, but we need you to make your comments. That's what's important. We want to hear your concerns, bringing those concerns to the members of the boards of the town so that the town can take appropriate action, not to have a back and forth between other people here. So,
Will some of that answer be is that it will not be a taxable piece of property? That I think is a fair question, sir.
it will not.
And it will not be, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct, okay. Second question I have to ask here is, on most things when we put leasehold improvements in, the owner of the property gains ownership of those leasehold improvements. Is that going to be the case here or not?
One more time, sir?
In other words, if you had a house, if you rented an office space and you put in carpeting, cabinets, and everything else, when the lease runs out, that carpeting, those cabinets belong to the owner of the property. Is that same thing apply here?
I think that is a question that we don't know the answer to because it depends upon what the improvements are. Are they going to be fixtures? Are they going to be personal property? Is it removable? It's a subjective question. I know that you're concerned about it, but I don't know if that question can be answered.
I believe that, if we can correct me if I'm wrong, that at the end of the lease, all of the equipment, the fences, all of the racking, that sort of stuff, is ownership is retained by us. It's always been owned by us, and it's the land that we're leasing. The land will not be...
Of course not.
Right, and any improvements should be put in, like stormwater basin or anything like that to improve runoff, or anything that would be attached to the landfill itself. We aren't going to claim ownership on that. The one part where you might have an interesting point is with the utility company. Part of this is an connection towards Eversource. Typically what is included in that is an easement from UI onto where we're interconnecting. That's between, I would probably be between the town and UI. The easements for that are also typically pretty small, and a couple of dozen feet by 10 so feet, and it would probably be off but along the road where our interconnection poles are going to be going, which is the access road to the fields. That's the actual public road.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Please step to the mic.
Roger Sherman, 5 Fairview Road. How are you going to connect to the grid? You're going to have telephone poles, large one, small one, underground?
So I believe right now the current plan is to, obviously since again we can't reach the town, we have to get it off of and outside of our fence line. That's going to be done through cable trays and protecting it much as you would, so that, if you go, if we hit it with one or we hit it with anything, it won't break. And it'll be protected from people touching it. Once we're off the cap, typically what we do is rise it up to a telephone pole and run the telephone pole out to the grid. Currently, there is, I think, single-phase power out to the transfer station. So we would be upgrading that from when single-phase power is when there's only one line on the power lines, and three-phase power is when there's 3 lines and it goes to T. We'd be upgrading that whole line out to, I think it's a mile or so out. That is all existing infrastructure from UI that we are on the hook for upgrading. But the actual thing, we sometimes will trench and sometimes we'll pull, so it's kind of up to UI exactly how that looks, but we are open to either within reason.
How tall are the poles going to be? Are they going to be like the transmission poles that run through our town?
No, the standard distribution poles, which are the ones that run through the town. Not the transmission grid ones, which are the high voltage ones, the typical.
So you say 50, 100 feet?
No. The telephone poles.
Okay, I'm just looking for a number.
They're, I think, 30, 40, 45.
And this holds that heavy line for a whole megawatt.
What?
That it.
Oh, yeah,
that'll hold.
that'll hold stock, that'll hold, we put it.
How many homes may this project actually power?
I think I can do the math on this
I think it's close to
maybe let's say,
1.7 million kilowatt hours. It's close to probably 1,000 homes.
1,000 homes?
it's more than satisfying.
We might not benefit, it might go to Branford. Who knows?
Well-
The town directly benefits. Buildings like this would be receiving a revenue share.
Okay.
Yeah, and you said we are over and above what the town already consumes. So all municipal building, including any high
Okay.
usage, is covered.
So all we're gonna get is the lease and the share of the power. We get no property tax revenue, for all your equipment. Is there gonna be solid structures there beside the panels? You're gonna have like transformers and all that happy stuff?
Yes, there will be an equipment pad with the step-up transformer. I'll have to talk to UI about what they are going to require. They've changed their mind a couple times on the last few years.
Are any of those structures on the map?
The structures are on the set of plans here. These are running, and I can make these available. They are. Yeah, they're in it's in the equipment, the information provided earlier. It is.
So if you're showing us half a presentation, you're not putting the whole show up.
The interconnection, like I said, is coming straight off of the southwest corner and along the road that is running from the baseball fields to the Buffalo station.
And they're all included in a packet.
Yeah, the packet that's out there, it's been circulated online.
Okay, but still, none of that, your equipment is taxable for the whole 20 years.
That's per state statute, that's not a local policy.
That's not a local?
That's not, it's for clarity, the array of size for this purpose.
Very specifically, because this is related to renewable energy, I'll let Adam explain it further. Keeping in mind that this is our town property, the leasing rate includes everything that's included as far as what they would pay us. At least $60,000.
Yeah, I think just the idea of the tax revenue, things like that is probably just important to touch on it kind of broadly. So forget the exact statute, but state of Connecticut for municipal renewable energy use for projects of this size is tax exempt, so it's not something that the town would necessarily come in, tax necessarily. But more importantly, because this is on town property, when you think about the overall financial model for a project like this, there are fixed revenues coming in, it's revenues from the sale of kilowatt hours to UI. That number is locked in for 20 years. So if anything, the revenue from the projects are actually declining over time because you're losing production. Right? So if the town, even if the town wants to assess like a property tax, there's only so much revenue that comes out the bottom of this project every year. So you're effectively taxing yourself if you were to do that.
I'm thinking if Technology Express is jumping, okay, in 10 years, solar might be obsolete. And then you go away, you're going to be able to, you're going to bankrupt it, blah, blah, blah.
That's a,
I'm just looking for a long-term, how it's going to affect us.
Sure.
Technology jump, AI, everything. A lot of things change in 20 years.
All right, next question. Let's move this along. Who else would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Sharon Brunstrom. I live at 58 Halsey Lane, which is right around the corner from this project. So I just have a few questions. I'll keep it brief. I was wondering, what are the number of projects that Green Sky has completed on capped landfills with a ballast system? How old are those projects? What's the incidence of disruption of the cap for those? And then finally, if the power goes out, and living in this neighborhood, I know the power goes out all the time, who is responsible for fixing those power lines? Is it Green Sky or is it UI? And will that take away from residents getting their power restored? Because it takes quite a long time in that area to get power restored when it goes out.
As a Connecticut resident, I completely agree. It takes a while. So Green Skies, our existing solar arrays on top of landfill caps. In Connecticut, we're on the Fairfield landfill cap, East Haven, North Haven, West Haven, 2 landfills in West Haven, Marion. And we're building on top of New London's landfill cap, New Haven this summer. So I would probably argue we have more experience than any solar developer in the state of Connecticut for landfill caps. We haven't ran into any disruption issues on building the landfill caps. It is a significant permitting engineering process and very by the book. Working with DEP, it's everything needs to be perfect. It's overseen. So we take it very seriously. It's a very good type of project to build on land that's you can't really utilize otherwise. As far as the utility, if there was a storm and utility poles go out, we own everything up until that interconnection point to the street. As soon as that power is sold to UI, it's sold on their poles and wires. Green Skies doesn't have any control over the maintenance of those poles and wires. So that's when the utility, that's their ownership, and unfortunately it might remain the same for if there was a storm and power were to go out. We would have to wait on the utility.
Can I just ask a follow-up? And so would your company get precedence over residents for power restoration?
I believe it would be the opposite. So they need to make sure all their customers are restored. If anything, we're the opposite of their customer. They owe us money. So when we're operating, they have to pay us. So you are their customers. I would imagine they would prioritize you first. And yep, Green Skies has been operational since 2009.
Thank you.
Those are some very good questions. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Please step up.
Hello, Kent Golden from 16 Old Still Road. First up, a huge thanks to everyone in the town who's been working to move this forward. It's been a dream of many people on the sustainability committee and just others in town who are interested in pushing the needle and moving the needle in terms of green energy, sustainable production, domestic production here. It's a very positive project in many ways. So a big thanks to everyone in town who's been trying to put this together, and thank you for coming to answer our questions, and the thoughtful questions that have been raised are very, very good as well. I'd like to speak in favor of this proposal. As I said, I think this is something that the town could definitely use in terms of us being a part of the solution, and it's guaranteed revenue for the town. This land is not really usable for anything else. We can't put a coffee shop here. We can't have walking trails. We can't do anything else here. I think this is a perfect solution for this area, and I am definitely in support of it. And if you need a motion, I still move to accept the proposal. Thank you.
Please step up.
Marlo Teneri from 74 Acorn Hill. I know that everybody in this room has their heart in the right place, otherwise you wouldn't be here, especially the volunteers and the invested time and money in this project. That being said, I'd like to step back in time a little bit, because that property and 300 acres around there belonged to my great-grandfather. My daughter's the 5th generation live out on Acorn Hill. We've got a long history there. And I've got a long history in watching this thing evolve from when my aunts, uncles, and grandparents owned it to when it seemed like a good idea to put a landfill on that site, because we were going to save revenue as a town and everybody was for it. We all know how that turned out, okay? It didn't end well. And I watched this through a very long and arduous project trying to get this back to a safe place, where all the test wells, groundwater was taken care of, that trout lake we used to swim in and fish in as kids, forget that. It was all multiple colors of the rainbow. The 3 sediment ponds that ended up down below there, all that town, state, and federal government expense to cap that landfill. And now, several years later, after everything's quiet and the ball fields are out there, we find ourselves standing in this very same gymnasium where I went to school in this elementary school as a kid, talking about how we're going to bring construction equipment, impose point loads, and load factors on basically a blister on this earth with all kinds of contaminants underneath there. And we all think that this is going to end well. And to put it into perspective, also we could, based on the numbers you presented tonight, $85,000 of revenue a year divided by 9,000 people as a population. So you're going to give me $10 a year as a resident, and you're going to put us at risk? I'd rather give you the $10 and tell you to go away and leave our town alone. That property has been through a lot. The neighborhood has been through a lot. And for $10 a year, just so we can say we're going green, I'd prefer you go away. And I know there's a lot of people in this room that might say, gosh, you know, what are you talking about? This is a wonderful thing. Trust me, 5 generations here, having owned that land in the past, this is going to be a monumental mistake. We're all going to live to see the day when we regret it. Take the solar panels and put them somewhere less risky. We're all going to be better off. You guys are going to make money on this. I know you are. We're each going to get $10 a year for the next 20 years. I'll write you a $200 check tonight to go home and leave us alone. That's my opinion on this. I hope everybody sitting on these committees takes this seriously. This is no joke. This is not, we're trying to be fashionable today. We're talking about the earth, the environment, and I got neighbors over there I know their hearts are in the right place. They're good people. They don't know what I know. They haven't seen evolution of this property over several generations. For the love of God, take your hearts, keep them in the right place where I know they're at now, but open your minds to the reality of what we're talking about. Look at this long term. It's going to prove to be a mistake. I hope everybody can see that. I don't know what more to say, except I can't believe we're standing here talking about $10 a year in my pocket when my taxes just went up $2,000 a year on a 2,400 square foot colonial that's right north of those ball fields you're looking at, and you don't see it in the picture because this is a sales pitch. And I don't care how you paint it, it's a sales pitch from a company who's looking to make money. And then they're going to go away and leave us holding the bag. Don't make this mistake. We're smarter than that. This town is better than that. And I implore everybody in this room tonight who's going to vote on this to turn it down. It's going to be a mistake. And mark my words, I've been here too long. I'm 66 years old. I know how all this is going to end. I've been a land developer, a builder, a broker. I'm a building inspector. I know about your solar panels and on a broader scale. Don't make this mistake. We're smarter than that. And I hope the rest of the people in this room come to realize that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emily Yu. I am from 106 Newton Road. I have a couple questions for you guys. In the light of the previous speaker's concerns, I would first like to know how thick that cap is over the landfill, because that definitely has a factor in, your engineering for sure. And also I have a question about your format. I noticed that like within that fenced area you have, there are considerable chunks of land where the solar panels outlined here are a bit uneven. I'm wondering if this is because of topography, if this is because you're planning to build like the station where your staff would be staying at, but I would like to know like why there's so much empty space that could potentially be utilized. I have one more question, but you can answer them in the end. And also, I would like to know who your lender is. You keep mentioning them, and I would like to know who you're talking about. If you could give a name or a company or something. Thank you.
So I'll handle the engineering questions first. You are correct. It is a weird shape. That's not how we would ideally the cheapest way for us to build this is a square. So that is a topo. That is, our equipment has a maximum slope that it can be placed on, both for runoff reasons and structural reasons. So due to how the drainage is structured at the landfill, the only way that we're going to meet the demand of the project was splitting things up, and obviously we have to split them up in chunks because the racks only come in sort of distinct sizes, which is why we can't just add on 2 or 3 panels at the end, depending on the system that we're using. But the other question was the investor question, which
the empty spaces in the array? Yeah, there's some areas that topography.
Yeah, those are all topography, just slope issues. The depth of the landfill cap, that's all the process that we have to go through the DEP.
Yeah.
So this has
Do you have a number?
Excuse me?
Do you have a number for the depth?
So we don't have the number. We don't have the closure documents from the town. The town and DEP should both have copies of the closure documents of when this was completed. Those have not been given to us. I believe, and this is me checking out, I believe state minimum is 18 inches of soil before the impermeable membrane either. I forget if this one is the membrane. There's typically 2 different technologies. One is an impermeable membrane, and the other is a layer of clay that goes beneath the soil. And I believe it's the actual cap and then 18 inches above that. I don't know what it is off the top of my head here, but you are correct that it's concerning, and that is something that we have to do due diligence on once we get those closure documents.
Just to add to that, the DEP process has not started yet. We have to have an option in place and then the state has to review that. So this project would not be built without the DEP approval. All of those documents are in place. The investor for this project would likely be KeyBank. That's as of right now. We'll probably still have to go through the DEP process of pulling this out, but that's most likely what we're going to choose.
You said KeyBank?
KeyBank.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
Our town attorney would like to say a couple of words first, and then we'll proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Nicholas Bemonte, town attorney. Just to address some of the concerns and questions we heard regarding what happens if the cap is pierced. We have contemplated that. Hopefully we never get there, but a provision is expressly built into the lease document itself, so that if the meeting tonight approves First Selectman Cardozo to actually sign that document, there is an express provision that addresses if in the event there is a piercing of the cap that leads to the discharge of any hazardous waste, then these guys are on the hook, not the town. And they would indemnify the town for any claims or losses that are brought for those purposes. So to the extent we as the town attorneys could, we wanted to insulate us from that potential.
Can you address the insurance issue? What happens if they go? All right, next question.
Hi, I'm Litt from 7 Justin Road.
Say your name again.
David Litt, 7 Justin Road. And my question is, you mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act and there will be some benefits for green skies. I guess depending what happens over the next couple of months in Congress, I know there may be slashes to the benefits. Is there anything that could happen in regards to the benefits that you could get if they're slashed that you would walk away from the project? Or are you committed at this point, no matter what happens in Congress to the IRA?
Yeah, well, fortunately, tightening in the town got ahead of this in 2023, sort of right when that legislation was passed federally. So when our RFP was issued, we priced in the IRAs and the policies. And we got a power purchase agreement award during that time. So we have locked in and grandfathered in our ability to build this project under those guidelines. If that grandfather in was also removed, it would be it's something we would have to reevaluate. But fortunately, as of right now, we're in a very good spot to build this project under the gas and IRA.
All right, I don't see any other questions. I think it's time to call for a vote. Do you have a motion?
No, I just have a question. Am I allowed? Thank you. Okay, sorry. Last time I promised I know we're going 18-minute trip. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I have this. Okay, so I want to be, the gentleman brought up the Infrastructure Act, and I just want to make sure that, do you guys have any concerns about the cost of tariffs? And majority of the solar panels are made outside of the United States. Any concern about tariffs or supply chain issues?
Yep, well, because of the IRA, we have to procure most of our equipment domestically, so we are able to get around those tariffs because we're buying in America.
Okay.
But, certain components are affected by tariffs, mostly for our rooftop and carport installations, but for this ground mount, it's mostly domestic product.
Okay, and then I have two other questions I promise that we. I'm sorry. If for some reason.
You may ask the question.
Thank you, sir. If for some reason there was like a really great deal on secondhand panels, could Green Skies pull out at any point in time and bring them somewhere else and walk out of this project? At any point in time, can Green Skies decide to break up with Woodbridge, take your ball and go home?
So prior to commencing the lease and starting the work, yes, there's an issue during the DEP process. We can walk away at that point. after we commence the lease, we can start construction and committing to it over here.
Okay, and then the last question is the question on climate change that John brought up. We have seen significant floods and erosion issues, especially in Connecticut last year. Parts of Oxford washed away, so I just want to confirm that there are some like flood hardening preparations being made to the equipment. So in addition to we know we don't want them to fly away in hurricanes, and we know you do great engineering work on that. We want to make sure that in the case of a flood and we have 3 or 4 feet that we're underwater, that we're okay.
So I would need to double check, but I'm fairly certain that this zone is not in the floodplain. Now that is an insurance question, obviously things flood outside of the floodplain, but we will, sorry, I thought this question was going to be about stormwater flooding. As you know, it's already up on top, going to be sitting on top of the landfill. It's already, a few feet up and then a couple of feet off of the ground, and it's not in the floodplain. I'm not overly concerned that this will get flooded out. If we have that much flooding, then it's probably an expensive thing. But again, it would just be insurance that would cover us, and we would come in and replace everything and go again. In terms of stormwater, I also understand, 30 or 34 got washed out or anything like that. When the landfills are capped, they form an impermeable membrane on top of them. So that land that looks like grass, the grass is growing off of the water that falls on top of it. Everything that gets through it hits the layer of clay and slides straight off of it, which is why the riprap drainage basins are there. And so as part of the deep review, they're going to review the existing closure documents to make sure that those are still valid in addition to whatever we're saying. So if there's any issues at the landfill, they'll find them before we even construct, before we're even allowed to put anything on the ground. Those would have to be fixed if there are any prior, and then obviously we would take over all liability for anything in place at the time.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve the 1 megawatt solar panel facility on the town's former landfill located at 85 Acorn Hill Road Extension. Will all those in favor please raise their hands and signify by saying aye. Aye. All those that are against? The ayes have it. It's been approved. All right. As it pertains to this special meeting, there is no further business to conduct. Is there a motion to adjourn the special town meeting? Any second? Second. Pat seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The meeting is adjourned. At this time, I will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the entire legal notice word for word. Is there such a motion? Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. All right, the ayes have it. The item for consideration is set forth in the notice of call in the annual town meeting pursuant to the town charter after the fiscal year 2026 budget. In the total amount of $61,095,758. The board finance recommendations are those presented at the preliminary budget hearing on April 24th, 2025, with the following exceptions. The capital account, which is $1,682,580. That is down from $1,767,580 in the original request. And the public works account for $1,498,913, which is down from $1,508,913 in the original request. In order to approve or amend the budget as proposed, each and every budget item must be considered, and that the budget as recommended by the Board of Finance shall be deemed to be approved unless the sum is increased, decreased, or eliminated by a vote that meets all of the following conditions. Number one, no recommended budget item may be increased to an amount which is greater than the original request. Number two, the total number of people present and voting when each question is put to a vote is not less than 250 people. And number three, the votes in favor of the motion to increase, decrease, or eliminate constitute not less than 60% of the total number of votes cast. I must ask the registrars, although I think it is apparent by visible means, whether or not there are 250 eligible voters present.
No.
The answer is no. And because we do not have 250 people present, no action on the budget to increase, decrease, or eliminate any item is allowed. And therefore, the budget submitted by the Board of Finance will be and hereby is adopted at the annual town meeting. The first selectman will give a brief presentation, and I encourage you to participate and hear questions and comments. And I now introduce our first selectman, Megan Cardoza.
Thank you, everybody. Wanted to just start by providing a brief overview in terms of where we are from a budget perspective and give you a little insight as to what's been happening over the course of this past year since our last annual meeting, and also what we're looking at a bit for down the road. From a salary standpoint, the new budget is at $61,095,758 as our moderator has indicated. And this just gives you a comparison to what it's been, or how it compares to last year and in '24. One of the significant items on this line, you'll notice at the far right, is the impact on our net adjusted grand list, which has increased by over 44.5%. As far as the budget expenditures are concerned, we wanted to just illustrate here exactly where our money's going. About 2/3 of our money goes to our total budget is spent on education. Of the increase for this year, which is about $2.8 million, 81.35% of that increase is the educational increases that we incur. And it just gives you the, on the right-hand lower right, it just, it'll give you, oops, wrong one, sorry. Gives you an indication as to what percentage of the increase is there. Any questions? One of the things I wanted to just illustrate is when you look at the major expenditures that we have had over that are incurred and have resulted in the increase as far as our budget is concerned, about $2.7 million of that is cost of living and labor wage increases, debt service payments, benefits, pensions, and also at this point in time, the budget has been approved, so that's a committed amount from our perspective. We can't really impact on that. But what I wanted to illustrate here, these are this is every year. So going into next year, we'll be looking at this starting now. So next year, we're looking at about a $2 million increase if we spend no other money on anything else. And that's one of the reasons I just wanted to illustrate this. A lot of times people talk to me about a zero budget, just setting a zero budget where you don't increase any of the department expenses and things of that nature. That's something that's been done or tried in the past. But we need to understand that if that's done, we still have to make the payments for the salary commitments, the salary increases. We still have to pay for our debt service and the other payments, other expenses like that. So even with a zero type of budget, you still will incur additional dollars. One of the ways that you mitigate that, and one of the ways a lot of the other municipalities mitigate that, is through growth. If your grand list continues to grow, then you increase those dollars and you have more revenue to take care of those types of things. Just to give you a sense as to where we are as compared to inflation. Inflation from over the last 9 years is approximately 32%. Our town government in that same amount of time has grown about 16%, just a little over 16%. Beecher Road School, our Woodbridge Board of Education, has grown about the rate of inflation, just slightly higher, and the Emily School District has grown about 41%. It's significant to consider that what we're doing at Beecher is we're maintaining a level of education at Beecher that most of us are very proud of, and we're doing it at the rate of inflation. So at some point in time, it becomes somewhat of a challenge to continue to educate to the degree that we are at simply the rate of inflation. So it's because you're competing against other schools in other districts, and their increases are going up a little bit more. The biggest change, one of the biggest impacts this year, and we'll get into why in a moment, is our mill rate. Our previous mill rate was at 46.43. And our mill rate now, with this existing budget, is at 32.62. The motor vehicle rate remains what it is, and it's right around what our regular mill rate is, and that's 32.46. This is the reason why our mill rate was impacted the way it was, and I know everybody here in this room, all of our residents, have felt the impact of this. Every 5 years, the state mandates that we do a revaluation. And what it's all about is it's a mass appeal process of updating the property values very specifically to ensure a fair distribution. So if the market changes, so should the amount of taxes you pay. That's how it's supposed to work. In the last three revaluations that we had, going back to 2011, the budget for 2011, we actually decreased from a revaluation standpoint, and you can see the numbers there. This year, this revaluation, the net adjusted grand list increase was over 44.5%. So it was dramatic. It was significant. And I know we completely understand and recognize exactly what that means. To some people, it's very, very significant. Real estate went up. Real estate specifically went up 54.47%. Any questions? One of the reasons, yes, please.
Would you mind explaining what a mill rate is?
I'll leave that to our finance guy to probably do a better job. Tony, would you like that? Sure.
It's on the bottom. Yours hasn't been turned on all night, so.
There we go. So the mill rate is the amount per $1,000 of assessed value. So if you have a rate of 32, it would be 32 for every $1,000 of assessed value of your property. So that's sort of how it's calculated. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So the mill rate is the cost of doing business. It's a fraction. How much it costs to run the town is the numerator, the denominator is the grand list, the value of all the properties. So if your denominator goes up, which it did during the most recent valuation, your fraction is going to go down, and that's why the mill rate has gone down. It went from 50-something to 30-something because the denominator expanded so greatly. The numerator also increased, but at a much lower rate than the denominator. And so that's why the mill rate, or your fraction, has gone down. The mill rate is now going to be about 32, 33 per thousand, right? So while your taxes may go up by a little bit, it's mitigated by the fact that the grand list has gone up by a lot.
Thank you, Jeff. We recognize that there's been a significant impact on some folks. In this particular evaluation, we've taken note of the fact that a lot of the homes that were most dramatically impacted were homes of smaller size and scope, and in particular areas to some degree. But those homes, a lot of those homes are currently, the residents of those homes are elderly or are folks who have been here for quite some time. And we recognize that this could present a hardship. So to that end, what the Board of Selectmen will be working with the Board of Finance on is to develop and to evaluate the different tax assistance programs that exist. And there are a number of them that we will be evaluating to see what we can do to try to mitigate some of that impact to some of our residents who were significantly impacted and could use the assistance from that perspective. Keeping in mind that whatever you do for one, everyone else kind of takes care of, because it does affect the mill rate, so you still need the dollars that are required to run the town. Yes, please.
Is that just for elderly residents, or is that for all residents? I ask because my property value increased over 50%, and the mill rate only decreased 29%.
Right.
And so, that is a huge variance.
We're looking at a number of different options, to be honest. What we're focused on is indeed, there are already some programs that are for the elderly. So that's what I'll refer to as more low-hanging fruit that we want to look at and evaluate. But we are looking at a number of other options, or at least a few other options, that could have an impact on the whole scale.
For middle-class families in town?
Correct. And we're even looking at it to see if there's potential for us to do it for occupations in particular, that type of thing there. We're evaluating what other towns are doing, we're evaluating what the state's doing, we're evaluating what the impacts will be to us and how we can best do it. Yes, ma'am.
Nika, has the town considered maybe taking a staggered approach when introducing the increases?
Oh, yes, as far as, it's I think
it's very similar to sharing.
What's called phase-in. Like some towns, what they'll do is they'll phase in revaluation. We spent a lot of time working with our consultants and working with our finance organization and looking at phasing it in. And the implication was that although basically the way phase-in works is it doesn't change what you're going to end up paying over the 5-year period. It doesn't change that to begin with. What it does do is it just delays it. So, for example, the state allows you to do from 2 to 4 years. They say 5, but I think because it's a 5-year thing, it's going 2 to 4 years. And if you do it, for example, for 4 years, what you're saying is, okay, the first year, you're going to only take 25% of the total that the assessment went up. So that means instead of your mill rate going from 46 to 32, your mill rate goes from 46 to 44. Because you still need the dollars to come from somewhere else if you didn't get it from the folks who are only paying 25% of it. But we looked at that as a whole. We looked at literally by property in a lot of cases and identified that the impact and the implication of that is not significant enough in terms of the total number of folks who were positively impacted as opposed to the number of folks who were negatively impacted. So it really turned out that the phase, and plus what happened in the second year, again, the mill rate would go down a little bit, but now you're paying 50% more on top of whatever the increases are from a budget standpoint. So having talked to them, we also consulted with not only the folks who do this for a number of different towns. How many did they say? How many think they said 90 of the 169 towns that they work with? We evaluated with them. We actually talked to our neighbors, we talked to our peers, whether it's finance director, whether it's another town leader, to see exactly what their experiences were with it. And ultimately, it did not seem, from our perspective, to have the kind of impact that's needed, which is the reason we started focusing on the tax assistance programs. But it was looked at extensively in terms of seeing exactly what that impact would be. And we'll continue to look at these. There's a couple of novel ones. There's a new legislation that was passed or changed last year that offers interesting looking, because it's new, there's not a lot of experience with it from other towns. So that's one that we're evaluating. We're working with our town attorney, and we're working with our town planner to see exactly what the impact of that would be, or how we could best leverage that, or is it something that we do want to leverage. From a budgeting practice standpoint, it seems, and I remember when I was on board of selection, we would win these Moody Awards and we would be AAA rating and everybody would feel really good about it, and it gets to the point where you don't think about it. We're heading into a period where this becomes very, very important. AAA rating is very important, and we're one of 15, 16 towns in the state of Connecticut that have a AAA rating. That becomes important because when you do borrow money, you borrow it at a lower interest rate, plain and simple. You just get better rates if you have the higher your rating is. And I say that's going to become important because we're looking at some pretty hefty potential investments as time goes on, and we certainly would like to keep it along that way. It's not to say that all of a sudden, if you fall off of that, it's a horrible thing. It just means that you're borrowing more than you have in the past. But it is the highest recognition of governmental accounting. So, and it's something that, in particular, really give a shout out to Tony Genovese, who's been here for 10 years. Thank you, Tony. This is a slide, a little busy, apologize for that, but for those of you who were here last year at the annual meeting, this is a slide I put up in terms of having just kind of come on board and looking at what it is that we were looking forward to doing in town as we look forward with the new budget. And the green checks here are specifically those items, those projects, those construction projects, those activities that we have either completed or are in progress but have been funded and are on their way. For example, the Community and Cultural Center at this point in time, construction has started. We expect it to be up and completed by the end of the year. In order to do that, we have to move some of the fire equipment out into the new storage facility that's over there. We got that started. That's almost completed at this point in time. And a lot of folks have asked me about the fire storage facility, and something that I realize a lot of people haven't remembered, if you've been here for a long time, is there was always supposed to be a storage facility at the firehouse. Unfortunately, when we were building the firehouse, the money that we put aside for the storage was not enough. It was not enough even for the slot that we were going to put it in. So consequently, we didn't get the storage facility. They used the old firehouse because it was available. They've been using that ever since. So this completes that end of the project. It finishes that, allows us to put the community center there, and we're moving forward with that. The beach and roof and grounds is completed. Town sidewalks. Once school is out in June, we start the town sidewalk project that we've been looking at for a few years at this point in time, if I'm not mistaken. And we're waiting for school to finish because part of that project is taking care of some drainage issues that exist right on the corner of Newton and Meeting House. And taking care of those drainage issues will require that we do some digging on the road. And we didn't want to do that while school buses needed to get back and forth. So we're doing it during the summer. And it will be completed during the summer. We had talked about doing something with the country club. At this point, the B is just saying, we've put dollars in the budget at this point to start looking at this. It's been completed. We don't have a specific plan on that. We haven't got quotes that want to RFP, but we have put money in the budget so that we can start the process that's necessary to do that. Keeping in mind, the reason it's colored a little differently is because we will try to find grants. We will apply for grants to see if we can get these things done. For those items that have the blue with the orange surrounding it. And I added, this wasn't on last year's, but the Center Building asbestos was something that came out of the blue. But it was a significant project in that it cost us a lot of money. And we're fortunate that we had some surpluses in areas where we could cover those dollars. We do have a grant application in for doing some more work there to make sure that we don't run into this. And it's taken a lot of time on the part of a lot of the resources here in town in dealing with it from a whole, just as a whole. Good time for a shout out to Brad and Mark in particular, who spent an enormous amount of time. Revaluation, we spoke a little bit about, that's completed. The POCD is almost completed at this point in time. We expect it by July to take care of that. We've been working with our updating our town strategic plan, and we'll continue to do that. That's yellow specifically because it's ongoing. The town planner we used, and after a year with the town planner, I can tell you, now it's exciting. When we first started, Tony will tell you, there were times when we were saying, I don't know if this is going to work, because I'm not sure we're getting what we need out of the resource. Within 6 months, that became very clear that we were. And in the last 4 to 5 months, it's become very, very clear that this is an essential resource in town, particularly from a strategic standpoint, particularly as it relates to the next big project that we're working on, is to really decide to evaluate and determine what zoning changes we need to make in the business district to allow us to increase the amount of commercial properties that we have. How do we make sure that we're allowing for mixed use in the appropriate places? We have 5 or 6 different zoning areas within that very small space. And when the town planner looks at it, the town planner is the one who comes and tells us, you don't need to do that, here's something you can do. They'll help us put together applications for our TPC in regards to what we can do in that area, specifically to invigorate it and to you know what a lot of people will tell you, if you bring the people, the businesses come. And right now, if you've been down there, you know that there's a lot of empty spaces, and this is exactly the type of thing that the town planner helps us. We can give it to him, we can go with it, it comes back to us, he gives us, he connects us with the state resources that we might need for grants, for assistance and things of that nature. So it's, that's been, and we do have it in the budget again for this year because it's such, in our estimation, it's such an essential resource. The business district transit project is what we call LOTSIP. You'll hear it referred to as LOTSIP, and that's about an $8 million grant that we got to do some connectivity. It's traffic and pedestrian and bike lanes and things of that nature down in the business district. And we have a meeting, as a matter of fact, we'll see that in a little while, in a moment. We have a meeting with the businesses as well as the residents, if you're interested, on June 16th. Outline that. Right now we're in the engineering stage. We did receive approval of the grant. We said that we've got the grant. First step is to do the necessary engineering on it, so we can determine exactly where we've done some drainage work. There's some other engineering type of work that needs to be done, and that'll go on for a little bit longer. And then in 26, we'll expect there to be shovels on the ground and really some things being done. But there'll be multi-path walkways and bike lanes from about where the Webster Bank, where our town line starts on Amity Road, all the way to Bradley Road and down Lucy Street and down Bradley Road. So, our CCW master plan is in progress. We hope by July timeframe in the summer, late summer, I'm thinking mid to late summer, we should have that completed. The beach feasibility study is what I consider to be the most impactful thing that we're doing right now. Feature feasibility study is so important because it will impact on so much of what we do beyond that. For those who have called me and are very interested in the beach pool and what we're going to do with the pool, that'll define what we do. If we're not able to operate the pool during school hours, that makes it very difficult to operate the pool. And that's the next item, the beach pool assessment. The center building renovation is something that we budgeted for at this point in time. We'll get that project started. The center building, give you an idea, our boiler in the center building is like over 40 years old. It's time to take a look at it and see exactly what we do. We have to make sure we come up with a plan, making sure any and all asbestos that's contained. It's an old building, it has asbestos, most of it's been contained thankfully, but now we have a plan and we have a process in terms of how we deal with that. The next item is a charter and ordinance revisions. Those are ongoing. We have budgeted for the charter revision. As far as initiatives are concerned, the policy and review process, we have a little bit more work to do on that, but that's been through the group, through a number of people who within the departments have gotten together and put that together. We've got budget for some bike information. The DOT Exit 59 is something that was put out to 2035, and they moved it to 2026 or 2027. The conversations we've had with them. And that's really significant because that definitely impacts our economic development down in that area there. You saw a little bit about what we're doing with the solar. In addition to what you've seen today from the solar perspective, Amity High School is looking at putting canopy solar and solar at their facility as well with this group of people who are here. Woodbridge has, for the first time in its history, a poet laureate. Very exciting for me. Eric is here. Thank you very much for doing that, Eric. I really appreciate that. Continue to work with Warren as far as the road paving is concerned, public works. The housing plan is being revised as we speak. They're on a regular basis. They're going over the housing plan to identify any changes that need to be made there. We are migrating over to .gov. That's very significant because .gov, the state of Connecticut has told all the municipalities at some point in time you have to move over to .gov, and that's our website. woodbridgect.org is what we have now. You move to woodbridgect.gov. And the security associated with that is so significant that the state is mandating municipalities move there. So we've taken that step. We're almost, what would you say, 90% there? 90% there. In a few months we'll be moving that over. And we have some work to do as far as third space opportunities. That's not something we looked at significantly. Any questions? Yes?
Is there, can you talk about where the police station falls into this?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
And I will. This is about the road ahead. This is to Diane's point. What do we got going now? What's next? What's coming up as we speak now? And we talked about the charter revision, the pool, the CCW. We talked about housing. We have a lawsuit that's out there that we have to consider, and we have to keep in mind what's happening there. And frankly, from a housing perspective, we may not have had as significant an impact as we did on the revaluation if we had more housing options in that particular category. So that's something that's very, very important for us to look forward. Senate building we talked a little bit about updating that. The police department is interesting because they're in a space that's just not enough for that. And they have been for quite some time. They've done everything they could to make it as accommodating as possible. And it's past time for us to look to what we need to do to provide our police services the facility that they require in order to continue to operate in the way we want them to operate forward. Their emergency centers, the emergency operations center is nowhere near capacity for when you go to towns around the smaller towns. Smaller towns that have a lot less than we do, and you look at the facilities and you look at what they have, and it's time for us to do that change. Now, we don't know exactly how that's going to be, but when we were looking at it and we did an analysis with one of our architects in terms of the Senate building and renovating everything at the Senate building, the number that they were talking about was $45 million. North Branford just put up a new police facility for, I think, $15 million. So we're looking at the possibility of a new facility, or we're looking at some other option, but we do feel at this point in time, it's time to put our police services in a headquarters that's appropriate. And the beach renovation, as I mentioned to you, is a key to so much that we do on a going forward basis. The reason I say that is because our debt services, if you look at the brown spot on the bottom, that's about the line with the green, just a little bit on top of it. That's about where we are now. The area that you see with the stripes is what would be projected. If the Beecher project, the renovation at Beecher, would be upwards of $80 million. The state gives us reimbursement. We're still looking at somewhere in the $30 to $50 million range for something along those lines. The facility could be as much as $18 million. Again, we're looking at different options, so it might be less. The Senate building is what we're looking to do could be at $10 million. And the remediation and taking care of that building that's existing at the country club property would be about $3 million. So this is what it could look like from a projected standpoint in terms of our debt services. Obviously, we go after as many grants as we can to try to mitigate this, but it is something that we are considering, and we're going to have to be very thoughtful and very smart in terms of how we go about this. Then there are the little things. This is just kind of a list of different items that we sometimes just take for granted. For example, we now have a new scenic road. We have Westward Road, has become a scenic road, Santa Barbara, and the country using that space that they had there, we were able to pull off a more successful event than last year, where we had about over 1,000 people, close to 1,500 people. The library had more people than they've seen. The book sale there, the vendors, a lot of the vendors sold out or came close to it. It was a tremendous event, and we're looking forward to next year's as well. Woodbridge, like me, that has been the annual event for the last 4 years or so. So this year they actually added a parade, a runway type of presentation where with participants representing the cultural heritages of Albania, China, Greece, Italy, Jamaica, Japan, Nigeria, Southeast Asia, Tanzania. Thank you.
It's late, Mika, it's late.
And Vietnam. And all those countries that I just mentioned are people, they were residents. They were people who lived here in Woodbridge who showed us their culture and sometimes their dress, which is really, it was a very, very cool thing.
Diverse at all.
First time we did early voting was this year. And we did it while we were renovating the gym. So we had a hustle around, so our registrars really had a hustle, and thank you for the work that you've done there. We had a community conversation event with Attorney General Tom that we had over 125, 130 people attend. So it was just so well received from our DEI committee. We're working on improving the communication and accessibility. Told you a little bit about .gov. We're doing technology upgrades in one of the conference rooms at Town Hall. We're right in the middle. By next Friday, we should have converted over to a voice over IP telephone system that'll actually save us money and operate better. So it was an easy decision to make, but that's going on as well. And we revived our mail newsletter. That's something, once Woodbridge Town News stopped going with mailing and did it all online, we felt it was important that we send something to every resident, so we're doing that. And we're using, if you notice on our website, if you go on our website, and you should go on our website if you're looking for information, because we're using banners, we're using different techniques on our website to try to provide people as much information as possible. You see more information there, and we're doing everything we can to work with the departments to try to update that information. We've joined with Connecticut Main Street, who is doing a full assessment of our business district, to let us know by I think this time in June. In July, we'll know so much more about the vacancies that we have in town, and we'll get a good picture of who we are from our perspective in terms of what we consider our downtown and our business district over in Amity Road. We've also, the Orange Chamber of Commerce is now known as the Amity Chamber of Commerce. It's specifically because they joined through the efforts of our EDC. They joined with Woodbridge, and Woodbridge businesses are joining the Amity Chamber of Commerce now. So this is something new where we're bringing that, and hopefully our downtown, our business district will engage with that, and we'll learn a little bit more about what people are looking for down there, and we can do more down there. And sustainable CT, it has about 125 points accepted for our bronze recertification, and our goal of silver by August. And so they keep working at that. But we've also got Heat Smart. If you haven't had an energy audit done on your home, look at our website under Heat Smart, and there's some opportunity there from an energy audit standpoint. And of course, we've got our summer events that you'll hear a little bit about. Truck or Treat was a great success this time. They held it over on Meeting House Lane. A little different, but it came off. It was like a carnival atmosphere, really done well. And Memorial Day, keep in mind we have that coming up. And then we've also got like the police toys for tots, and the police stuff with cruiser, and the penguin plunge, and things of that nature that are going on as well. So there's a lot happening in town. You just need to pay attention, and I want to thank the residents for making them successes. So it only matters if you come and show up. Yes, Andrea.
Don't forget, there's also the summer concerts on the green.
Funny you should mention that.
Funny.
Funny you should mention that. There is a Memorial Day ceremony. We have it every year. Please keep that in mind, May 26th, 11 o'clock. Just a really wonderful reminder. It's Barry Joseph coordinates this every year, and it's a wonderful reminder of what the holiday is really all about. This is a good one. This is a fun one. And I'll give credit to my wife, a friend of my wife's who brought this up a little while ago to us. And she said, you realize on June 5th of 25, the date will be written as 06525, which is our zip code.
Nice.
So it's a day that the whole world celebrates Woodbridge. And to that, we thought we put together a little celebration at Pease Road, and we have a couple of our seniors who are interning at Town Hall who are helping coordinate this for us, and we will have 06525, our code, our town, our community. There's the First Church of Christ Woodbridge Strawberry Festival, June 13th this year. I mentioned the business connectivity open house and our concerts on the green. There are five Tuesdays in July this year. So 5 concerts in the green in July. And that is it. Any questions? We have one, yes.
I have a quick question.
Please.
About the use of this building.
Yes.
If it's cost prohibitive for the police to concur, are there other ideas, housing or?
We're really looking at every idea. Somebody made a suggestion as to looking at moving them to Town Hall and Town Hall into Center Building and just doing a little bit of renovation. So that just gives you a sense of looking at a number of different ideas and ways that we can do some things.
When might we hear about, like,
we after July, when our new budget starts, we have in the budget to do the analysis that's required so we can start understanding what can be done. You know, the new building, the thing with the new building, it's like, where do you put it? Where are you going to put it? So that's a concern, that's a consideration. So there are a lot of things that are being considered, but it's something that we need to move forward on. And I'm committed to seeing that we do something with that. There's a lot going on in town. You know, the reason I put up the slide in terms of the initiatives and the planning and the projects was very specifically because I don't always remember. It's the folks who I work with, thankfully, who every now and then say, hey, we did this, we did that. We just try to get the work done, and that's what we continue to do. The biggest thing that I try to tell people is that what we need to do as a town is we need to grow. We need to find ways to grow. We need to be thoughtful about how we do it. We need to be smart about what we do it. We need to be considerate about how we do it, both from a financial and environmental standpoint, but we need to grow. It's the one way we can mitigate the costs that continually go up. And we can do it in such a way, I think there's a way to achieve the balance here in town. And if we work together, if we all work together, if we just understand that there's a need, and we all work together to find out how we get to that need, there's little doubt in my mind that we can find the balance and we can move forward and grow as a town. So I thank you all for your participation during the year, for your attention and your engagement by just being here. And I look forward to hearing from you as time goes on. I love to hear from folks, so please keep the communication.
All right, at this time, does anybody have any other comments that they would like to make before we adjourn the meeting? I entertain a motion. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned.